Okay, so we're talking about the Torah reading, and we discussed the breakdown of the Torah portions and how that's read throughout the year, and how we do Monday and Thursdays and Shabbos and the different Aliyah numbers. So now we're ready to take out the Torah. So when we take out the Torah, when we open the Ark, so the Ark opening time is a very auspicious time. It's a very special time. It's a time when the gates of heaven are open. In fact, there's a custom among the Chabad Rebbes that they would honor their children with opening the Ark. So the Rebbe, whoever the Rebbe was at the time, their children would usually be the ones that had the honor of opening the Ark, because it was such a special honor and such a special moment when the Ark is open, symbolizing the gates of heaven opening, that while they were still, Rebbes in waiting, I guess, the sons of the Rebbes would open the Ark in Lubavitch. And it's a very special time because, as I said, the Ark is open, the gates of heaven are open, prayers are answered at that moment, and that's why we'll get to in a moment, Baruch Shmei, the reason behind Baruch Shmei. But in the beginning, we start by saying Vayihi b'Nsaya ha'arin. So you'll notice we have three verses here. On page 61 in the Siddur, you'll see there are three verses in the top paragraph, right? We sing Vayihi b'Nsaya ha'arin Vayomer Moshe, right? Well familiar with that song. So it starts with whenever the Ark set out, Moses would say, "Arise," right? And that's, we talked yesterday actually in our Chumash about the camping of the Jewish people camped around the tabernacle in the desert. So how did they know when it was time to go and time to camp? When the cloud that was hovering above the tabernacle would rise, so that meant it was time to pack up and leave. And they would all go in the desert. They would start heading. The cloud would head in front of them, and they would follow it to wherever their next destination was. And with the Ark in this formation, with the Ark in the middle, and that's how they would travel. But the Ark would actually jump ahead of them and would smooth out the path before them and eliminate any threats, any dangerous threats that were coming up. So Moses would say this statement. Now that was when the Jewish people would go into battle. So they would take out an ark. It wasn't the Ark of the Covenant that was in the Holy of Holies, but it was a different ark, a war ark that would go out in front of them and would lead the way. But similarly, we recall this when we open the Ark and we take out the Torah scroll. The Torah scroll is a symbolism of the tablets that were in the Ark of the Covenant. That leads the way for us, and we follow it. So that reflects on what happened in the past when the Jewish people were out in the desert, when they would go out to battle, and so on. But then we turn our attention to the future. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah. Now that we're taking out the Torah, we honor by saying that when Mashiach comes to the Messianic age, so we at that time from Zion shall go forth the Torah. Right, that the Torah wisdom and values will spread from Jerusalem, from the temple to the entire world. That'll be in the Messianic age. And then we conclude with Baruch Shenasan Torah L'Am Yisrael. Blessed is he who gave in his holiness, gave the Torah to his people. That's the present. So if we talk about the might, the strength, the power of Torah to lead, to guide us as it was in the past, and that we're looking forward to the future, which is when the Torah will again lead the way and be the central teaching from which all the values will flow from the Torah in Jerusalem. So we have to recognize that we have the Torah now as well. And so we bless God, we thank God for giving us such a special gift. So this allows us to appreciate and to cherish and to love the Torah even more. So as it's coming out of the Ark, and we're going to, obviously we stand up out of respect for the Torah scroll, because we know there's a law that you have to show respect to a Torah scholar. Why? Because there's Torah in his mind. And so therefore you show respect. It's not to the person, but it's to the divine wisdom that is sort of embedded, imprinted in his mind. So if that's the case about a person that has to be shown respect because he's got Torah in his mind, so the Torah itself, how much more so? So that's how we know we need to act respectfully in front of a Torah scroll. It's the Torah itself. So this allows us to appreciate, to cherish the Torah from the past, the future, the present, and we will accord it proper respect. Now, when the Ark is open, we sing Vayihi b'Nsaya, and then we say Baruch Shmei. Now, there's the different customs exactly. Do you say Baruch Shmei after the Torah comes out of the Ark? While it's in the Ark, I think generally the most common practice I've seen in Chabad synagogues is that all of this is done while the Torah is still sitting in the Ark. So you open the Ark, you sing, the doors are open, we see all the Torahs, we say Vayihi b'Nsaya for the reason I just mentioned, and then we say Baruch Shmei. Baruch Shmei is a section from the Zohar, which opens with Rabbi Shimon, the hero of Lag BaOmer we just celebrated, saying that when the Torah is taken from the Ark, so one should say this prayer. And it's a really moving, beautiful prayer that is worthwhile. It's in Aramaic, it's written in the language of the Zohar in Aramaic, so that we can understand it, because back in the day, people had a hard time with Hebrew, but they all spoke. Aramaic was their spoken language, so that was like, it's as if it was written in English back then. And so it's a prayer that you can understand in the Aramaic. We can look it up in the English, a really beautiful prayer. And again, because during this time, when the gates of heaven are open, so Rabbi Shimon says it's an appropriate time to recite this prayer. Furthermore, like the Rebbes, as I mentioned, would honor their children with opening the ark, and they would say that during this time you can pray for all kinds of things, and the prayers are certainly answered. Okay, after we finish, we conclude this paragraph here, Brich Shmei, with Be'an HaRachitz, right? They're all familiar with the song Be'an HaRachitz. It's like 3.5 lines from the bottom of the page. And then the Torah is taken out of the ark and handed to the Chazan, to the leader. Now, whenever we hold the Torah, this is true for the Chazan, it's true of anybody. Often you'll be called upon in the shul to carry a Torah. Sometimes we take out more than one Torah scroll. So you'll have to carry the Torah then, or you lifted the Torah and you're going to take it back to the ark. So when we hold the Torah, we always hold it leaning on our right side. As we've talked about in the past, in this space, we know that the right side is the favored side. And so the respect for the Torah is to hold it on, more respect to hold it on the right side. So we would lean it on the right side of our body, holding it obviously with both hands. We don't want to be careless and reckless when we hold the Torah, and we also don't want to be nonchalant and casual. And so holding it with two hands shows that you have a little bit more respect, you take it a little bit more seriously. So we hold it with both hands, leaning against the right side of our chest and to our right shoulder. When people see the Torah, so when you take the Torah, you hand the Torah, when you pass the Torah passes you, we endeavor to kiss the Torah, not during a pandemic, but in other times when it's safe, we kiss the Torah. That's the way we show our love and our respect for the Torah. So the way it works is the Torah is brought from the ark, and it goes through the synagogue straight to the podium where it is read. And everybody stands while the Torah is in motion. Right? That's how it works. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I just remember from being there live, so I might be a little off, but if I'm not mistaken, the Rebbe I know when he would daven, so he would daven always from his siddur. He would always pray from his siddur, and he wouldn't look out of his siddur during davening. He would always be reading word for word inside. The one exception was when the Torah was out and about, when the Torah was in motion. The Rebbe would always follow the Torah. Well, when the Torah was going to the bima, there's a little bit to say, but he would say following the Torah, and certainly when it was going back, he would be davening, but his eyes would always be on the Torah. It's a way of showing respect. So he would, first of all, in his position in 770, where he would stand, so the Torah would be read sort of behind him, but he would always turn to face the Torah, so his body was always facing the Torah, and he would always follow the Torah, track it with his eyes. It's a sign of respect and reverence for the Torah to follow it while it was in motion. After the Torah is laid down on the bima, on the reading table, that's when people sit down. But that's generally the proper decorum when the Torah is being taken through the shul. Now the Chazan is handed the Torah, and he says, top of page 62, Gadlu la Hashem iti, exalt the Lord with me, and let us extol his name together. So this is a call. The Chazan, the leader of the service, is calling out to the congregation. Now that we're showing such great accord and respect for the Torah, right? So now we're calling on everybody to exalt God. God is the Torah is his wisdom. So we call on the congregation to exalt God, right? And it's interesting that this statement, you'll notice, is a 6-word verse. It's a verse from Psalms. It's a 6-word verse. And it's significant, of course, the 6 words. It recalls when King David, way back in the times of King David, which is a long time ago, the times of King David, he would, there was a time that he took the ark and brought it into its new location. So when he was moving the ark back and bringing it to Jerusalem, so it says that David was dancing in front of the ark and he was celebrating. And it says that the ark, so it was a whole procession, the Jewish people were gathered, and it was great celebrating, and David was leading the celebration. And every 6 steps they took, they stopped to offer sacrifices to God and to praise God. So this happened every 6 paces. So similarly, we say, God Hashem, it's a 6-worded verse, it's a 6-word verse that recalls the 6 paces, that every 6 paces they stop to praise and to celebrate God. Also, it's got 26 letters, which of course symbolize the 26 letter numerical value of the 4-lettered name of God, which is the numerical value of 26. And the congregation responds with L'cha Hashem Agdula, Lord, yours is greatness, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's